She's saying that some police just want to pin it on someone, that they can pin it on me.
She answered an ad, promising luxury and companionship. He promised excitement and generosity. What began as a secret arrangement on a sugar dating site ended in a backyard fire at 3 a.m., with a 23-year-old nursing student's dreams reduced to ash. Mackenzie Lueck thought she knew who she was meeting in that empty park. She thought the messages, the months of conversation, meant safety. She was wrong. In the digital age, how well can you ever really know someone? And when trust becomes a trap, who's left to tell the story? Before we get into the story, drop a comment with your country and the time right now. The California sun rises warm and golden over El Segundo on the morning of June 16th. Inside a modest home, the Lueck family gathers in the soft aftermath of grief. They have just buried their matriarch. The air smells of coffee and flowers wilting in vases. Conversations are gentle, careful, as if the house itself might shatter under the weight of sorrow. Mackenzie Lueck moves quietly through the rooms, folding clothes into her suitcase with practiced efficiency. She is 23, dark-haired, her eyes carrying both exhaustion and resolve. Around her neck hangs her grandmother's locket, a small silver heart that catches the light when she turns. Her fingers brush over it absently as she zips the bag closed. Her mother enters the room, pausing in the doorway. She watches her daughter in silence for a moment before speaking. "You don't have to rush back, you know." Mackenzie glances up, offering a soft smile. "I have class on Monday, and work. I'll be okay, Mom." The words are meant to comfort, but they settle uneasily in the space between them. Her mother nods, though her expression remains tight with worry. There is always worry now, woven into the fabric of parenting, a daughter navigating the world alone. Outside, the neighborhood is Sunday morning still. Children ride bikes in lazy circles. A dog barks somewhere distant. Mackenzie hugs her father at the front door. His embrace is long, wordless. When he pulls back, his eyes are damp, but he says nothing. Some goodbyes carry weight beyond language. She climbs into the rideshare vehicle, waving as it pulls away from the curb. The family watches until the car disappears around the corner. The house feels emptier when the door closes. At the airport, Mackenzie checks in with her phone, scrolling through messages as she waits in the security line. Her thumbs move quickly over the screen. Friends from her sorority send condolences. A classmate asks about next week's exam, and buried among the notifications is a message from someone else, a name only she knows, a meeting arranged in quiet pixels and anticipation. She boards the evening flight to Salt Lake City. The cabin lights dim as the plane ascends into twilight. Passengers settle into sleep or screens. Mackenzie leans against the window, watching California shrink beneath the clouds. She does not know that this journey will be her last. The plane touches down at Salt Lake City International Airport at 1:30 in the morning. The terminal is nearly deserted, fluorescent lights humming over polished floors. Surveillance cameras capture her, moving through the concourse, pulling her suitcase, checking her phone, her expression unreadable in the grainy footage. She steps outside, into the cool June night. The air smells of asphalt and distant mountains. A Lyft driver pulls up within minutes, his face illuminated by the dashboard glow. Mackenzie climbs into the back seat, offering a polite greeting. The driver nods, confirming the destination on his phone. "Hatch Park," he says aloud, more to himself than to her. "Yes," she replies, her voice is steady. The car pulls away from the airport, merging onto the freeway. Streetlights stripe the interior with passing light and shadow. Mackenzie texts someone, her thumbs moving with purpose. The driver glances in the rearview mirror once, noting her focus, then returns his attention to the road. They drive north, through the sleeping city. Buildings give way to residential streets, then to open stretches bordered by trees. Hatch Park is small, unremarkable, a patch of grass and playground equipment tucked into a quiet neighborhood. At this hour, it is utterly silent. The Lyft pulls into the parking lot at 3:15 in the morning. Mackenzie thanks the driver, exits the vehicle, and closes the door softly behind her. She stands alone under the dim glow of a single street lamp, her breath visible in the cold air. The driver watches her for a moment, then drives away. He will later tell investigators that she appeared calm, unhurried, that she walked toward the far side of the park, where the shadows thickened beneath the trees, that she did not seem afraid. At 3:59 a.m., Mackenzie's phone goes dark. The last ping registers at a cell tower less than a mile from Hatch Park. Then nothing. Silence swallows the night whole. By the morning of June 20th, Mackenzie's friends are frantic. Group messages go unanswered. Calls roll to voicemail. Her social media accounts remain frozen in time. The last post a photo from California, captioned with a heart emoji and a prayer hand symbol. One friend drives to her apartment. The door is locked. The lights are off. Her car sits untouched in the parking lot, gathering pollen. The unease that has been building for days crystallizes into fear. The friend calls the police. At Salt Lake City Police Headquarters, a missing persons report is filed. The detective assigned to the case is a man in his late 40s, gray beginning to thread through his hair. He has worked hundreds of cases, but something about this one prickles at his instincts. A young woman, responsible, no history of disappearing. A family who insists this is unlike her. A digital trail that stops abruptly in the middle of the night. He begins pulling records. Lift logs show the drop-off at Hatch Park. Airport surveillance confirms her arrival. Phone data reveals her last known location. And buried in her message history, carefully hidden but not hidden enough, are conversations with a man she met online. The detective reads through the exchanges. They span months, casual at first, then more frequent. Plans to meet, promises made in careful language. The man's name surfaces like a stone breaking the surface of still water. Ayoola Adisa Ajayi. The detective runs the name through the system. A few minor incidents, nothing alarming on the surface, but the address listed is in Fair Park, a neighborhood not far from Hatch Park, close enough to matter. Media coverage begins that same day. Local news stations run Mackenzie's photo, smiling, vibrant, full of life. The anchors speak in somber tones about the missing student, the concerned family, the search efforts underway. Social media ignites. Posts flood in from friends, classmates, strangers, offering prayers and theories. "Where's Kenzie?" becomes a rallying cry. Her face appears on flyers taped to streetlights and store windows. Volunteer search parties comb through nearby parks and trails, but the hours stretch into days, and hope begins to thin like morning fog under a rising sun. The detective works late into the night, cross-referencing data, building timelines. He maps Mackenzie's last known movements with obsessive precision, every minute accounted for, every location verified, and always, the trail leads back to Hatch Park, to the moment her phone went silent, to the name that now haunts his investigation. On June 22nd, the detective and his team arrive at Ajayi's residence in the Fair Park district. The house is modest, single-story, surrounded by a chain-link fence. The yard is unkempt, weeds pushing through cracked concrete. A neighbor watches from across the street, arms crossed, suspicious. The detective knocks. The door opens almost immediately, as if Ajayi had been waiting. He is tall, lean, with sharp features, and an expression that reveals nothing. His voice is calm, measured, almost pleasant. "Can I help you?" The detective introduces himself, explains the reason for the visit. Ajayi listens without interruption, nodding occasionally. When asked about Mackenzie, he shakes his head slowly. "I know who you're talking about," he says. "We chatted online, but I never met her in person. Not that night, not ever." His words are smooth, rehearsed. The detective notes the lack of hesitation, the absence of visible stress. He asks if they can search the property. Ajayi agrees without resistance, stepping aside to let them enter. The house is tidy, almost sterile. Minimal furniture, clean counters, nothing out of place. But in the backyard, something catches the detective's attention. A patch of disturbed soil near the fence line. The grass around it scorched, as if something had burned there recently. One of the officers bends down, noting the faint smell of accelerant. He looks up at the detective, who nods in silent acknowledgement. Ajayi stands in the doorway, arms at his sides, watching them with unreadable eyes. "We had a small fire," he says before anyone asks. "Yard waste. Nothing unusual." The detective thanks him for his cooperation. They leave, but the unease lingers. On the drive back to headquarters, the detective reviews the inconsistencies. Ajayi's phone data places him near Hatch Park at the same time Mackenzie was there. Security cameras at his residence show they were turned off the night she disappeared. And that patch of burned earth in his yard, it tells a story Ajayi is trying to erase. By evening, surveillance warrants are approved. The investigation tightens around him like a noose. The police cyber unit works through the night. Analysts comb through Mackenzie's digital footprint, tracing every conversation, every login, every click. They reconstruct her online life with surgical precision, and what they find confirms the detective's worst fears. Mackenzie and Ajayi had been communicating since early 2018. The messages began on a platform designed for transactional relationships arrangements, where companionship is exchanged for financial support. The language is coded, but clear. Meetings discussed, expectations outlined, trust built over months of careful conversation. On the night of June 17th, Mackenzie sent a final message confirming the meeting at Hatch Park. The timestamp matches the lift drop-off. Ajayi's response came seconds later, confirming his arrival. Then both phones went silent. The forensic analyst leans back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. He flags the evidence, forwarding it to the detective with a note. Pattern of contact confirmed. Meeting arranged. No communication. After 3:59 a.m., the detective reads the report in the dim light of his office. Outside, the city sleeps. Inside, the truth begins to take shape, fragmented, ugly, undeniable. By morning, the media has learned about the connection. Headlines shift from missing student to sugar dating link investigated. The story explodes across social platforms. Opinions flood in, harsh and immediate. Some blame Mackenzie for trusting a stranger. Others focus on the dangers of digital relationships. The discourse is loud, messy, human. Mackenzie's family releases a statement through their attorney. They ask for privacy. They ask for compassion. They ask the public to remember their daughter as more than a headline. But the story has already taken on a life of its own. On June 26th, investigators return to Ajayi's residence with a full search warrant. This time, they bring cadaver dogs, forensic technicians, and heavy equipment. The neighborhood watches from behind, curtains and half-open doors. The search begins in the backyard, where the burned patch of soil drew attention days earlier. Technicians carefully remove layers of earth, sifting through ash and debris. Within the first hour, they find something that stops them cold. Bone fragments. Small, charred, unmistakably human. The detective stands over the excavation site, his jaw tight. Around him, the team works in grim silence. They recover more fragments, pieces of fabric, a watch with a melted band, remnants of a purse. Each item is photographed, catalogued, sealed in evidence bags. A neighbor approaches the fence, pale and shaking. She tells the detective that she saw smoke rising from Ajayi's yard, late on the night of June 17th. She thought nothing of it at the time. People burn trash, yard waste. But the smell had been strange. Chemical, wrong. She had mentioned it to her husband, but they never called the police. Now, standing at the fence line, she weeps. The detective thanks her, his voice gentle. He knows the weight of hindsight. He knows how guilt attaches itself to small decisions, to moments when action might have changed everything. Inside the house, investigators find more. A receipt for gasoline purchased hours before Mackenzie's disappearance. Plastic sheeting in the garage. Cleaning supplies arranged with military precision. And in the bathroom, trace amounts of blood in the grout between tiles, invisible to the naked eye but glowing under luminol. The evidence is overwhelming. The case shifts from missing person to homicide. DNA samples are rushed to the lab. The detective knows they need confirmation, something definitive to tie the remains to Mackenzie. Until then, the family waits in agonizing limbo. Media crews descend on the neighborhood. Cameras capture the excavation, the evidence bags, the exhausted faces of investigators. The story dominates evening news across the nation. Vigils are organized. Candles are lit. Strangers weep for a young woman they never knew. On June 28th, SWAT teams surround Ajayi's residence at dawn. The operation is swift, coordinated. Ajayi is taken into custody without resistance. He stands in handcuffs, expressionless, as officers read his rights. He is charged with aggravated murder, aggravated kidnapping, obstruction of justice, and desecration of a human body. Each charge is read aloud at the booking station. His face remains blank. At the press conference that afternoon, the district attorney stands before a wall of microphones. Her voice is steady, but her eyes betray the exhaustion of the past weeks. We have arrested Ayola Adisa Ajayi in connection with the death of Mackenzie Lueck. The investigation is ongoing, but we have sufficient evidence to move forward with prosecution. She does not take questions. The room erupts as she walks away. That evening, Mackenzie's sorority sisters hold a vigil on the University of Utah campus. Hundreds gather, holding candles that flicker in the warm June breeze. They share memories of her kindness, her ambition, her laughter. They weep openly, holding each other as the sun sets behind the mountains. Online, hashtags, trend, number justice for Mackenzie, number remember her. The story has become a national conversation about trust, danger, and the invisible risks of modern connection. The detective watches the vigil from a distance, standing alone beneath a street lamp. He thinks about the evidence board in his office, about Mackenzie's face staring back at him for days. He thinks about the call he will have to make to her parents when the DNA results come back. He has been a cop for 23 years. He has seen terrible things, But this one has carved itself into him in a way he cannot yet name. The medical examiner's office is cold, sterile, fluorescent. The examiner moves with practiced reverence, treating the remains with a dignity that transcends their condition. Every observation is recorded, every measurement precise. The bones tell a story. Blunt force trauma to the skull, hemorrhaging in soft tissue, ligature marks consistent with strangulation. Her arms had been bound behind her back. The violence had been sustained, deliberate. The examiner pauses, removing her gloves. She has performed hundreds of autopsies, but the young ones always linger. She imagines Mackenzie alive, laughing, studying, planning her future. Then she returns to the table and continues her work. The report is delivered to the detective within 48 hours. He reads it alone in his office, the door closed. The details are clinical, but the horror beneath them is unmistakable. Mackenzie's final moments had been terror and pain. He sets the report down, pressing his palms against his eyes. Outside, the city moves on. Inside, the weight of knowing settles deeper. The autopsy findings are shared with the prosecution team. They will form the backbone of the case, physical evidence of murder, of suffering, of a life extinguished by cruelty. But the timeline remains incomplete. The exact sequence of events, the moments between Mackenzie's arrival at Hatch Park and her death, are still shadowed. The detective knows they need more. They need Ajayi to break. Back at the police lab, investigators build a digital map of Ajayi's movements. On the night of June 17th, cell tower data, GPS pings from his vehicle, purchase history from his credit cards. Every byte of information is analyzed, cross-referenced, verified. The picture that emerges is chilling in its precision. At 7 p.m., on June 16th, hours before Mackenzie's flight even landed, Ajayi purchased 10 gallons of gasoline from a station near his home. At 9 p.m., he bought plastic sheeting and industrial gloves from a hardware store. At midnight, his phone was turned off. It powered back on at 3 to 10 a.m., pinging a tower near Hatch Park. At 3:59, both his phone and Mackenzie's went dark simultaneously. His phone reappeared on the network at 4:30, now back in Fair Park. The defense will challenge the admissibility of some evidence, arguing about warrants and privacy, but the prosecution knows the timeline is damning. It shows premeditation, planning, intent. The detective presents the findings to the district attorney. She listens in silence, then nods slowly. He knew what he was going to do before she ever landed. The detective agrees. This was not impulse. This was calculated murder. Meanwhile, the University of Utah issues a campus-wide alert about digital safety. Counselors are made available for students struggling with the news. Mackenzie's professors hold moments of silence in their classrooms. Her absence echoes through halls she will never walk again. A week later, investigators interview a contractor who had worked briefly with Ajayi in early 2019. The man sits across from the detective, nervous, wringing his hands. He asked me to build something, the contractor says. A room in his basement, soundproof, with hooks in the ceiling and reinforced locks on the door. The detective leans forward. What did you say? I told him no. I said I didn't do that kind of work. It felt wrong, you know? Like something out of a horror movie. The contractor had walked away from the job, but he remembers Ajayi's expression when he refused, calm, unbothered, as if rejection was merely an inconvenience. Did he say why he wanted it? The contractor shakes his head. No, but I got the sense he'd ask someone else, someone who wouldn't question it. The testimony is documented, added to the growing file. It paints a portrait of a man with violent fantasies, a man who sought to build a space designed for suffering. The defense will argue it's circumstantial, that thoughts are not crimes, but the jury will hear it. They will imagine that room. They will see the pattern. The media seizes on the detail. Headlines scream about the soundproof room. Speculation runs wild. The five, they scream. The public's fear deepens, imagining what might have happened if the contractor had agreed. Mackenzie's story becomes a cautionary tale, a warning shared in Telsabari. Whispered conversations about danger hiding behind ordinary faces. In the interrogation room, the detective sits across from Ajayi. Between them is a table, a recorder, and the weight of everything unsaid. Ajayi's attorney sits beside him, silent and watchful. The detective slides a folder across the table. Inside are lab results, DNA confirmation. The charred tissue recovered from Ajayi's backyard matches Mackenzie's genetic profile. Certainty, in black and white. Ajayi glances at the document. His expression does not change. We know she was at your house, the detective says. We know what you did. The evidence is overwhelming. But we need to know where the rest of her is. Ajayi looks up, meeting the detective's gaze. For a moment, Something flickers behind his eyes, not remorse, but calculation. "I want to speak to my lawyer," he says quietly. The interview ends, but the detective knows they are close. The net has tightened to the point where even Ajayi's composure cannot hold. Outside the station, vigils continue. Mackenzie's parents have traveled to Salt Lake City, staying in a hotel near the police headquarters. They wait for news, for closure, for anything that will bring their daughter home. The nation watches. Social media pulses with outrage and grief. Strangers send messages of support to the Lueck family. Donations pour into funds established in Mackenzie's name. The case has transcended the individual. It has become a mirror reflecting society's fears about technology, trust, and the monsters who hide in plain sight. In July, after days of negotiation, Ajayi agrees to speak again. This time, the conversation is different. His attorney has advised cooperation in exchange for leniency. The death penalty looms, and even Ajayi understands the mathematics of survival. He sits in the same interrogation room, but now he speaks. He tells them about Logan Canyon, about the drive north into the mountains, about the shallow grave he dug beneath the trees. He provides coordinates. He describes the location with clinical detachment, as if discussing a construction project. The detective listens, his jaw clenched. He wants to reach across the table, to demand answers to questions that have no satisfying responses. Why Mackenzie? Why that night? Why any of it? But he remains silent, letting the recorder capture every word. The confession is damning. It confirms premeditation. It confirms disposal of remains. It confirms that Ajayi knew exactly what he was doing at every step. When the recording stops, Ajayi is led back to his cell. The detective sits alone in the room, staring at the empty chair across from him. Later that day, investigators drive to Logan Canyon. The location Ajayi described is remote, accessible only by a narrow dirt road. They hike in, carrying equipment, following GPS coordinates. At dawn, they find it. The grave is shallow, barely concealed beneath fallen leaves. Forensic teams begin the careful work of exhumation. What they recover confirms the worst. Human remains, consistent with Mackenzie's profile. Duct tape, charred fabric, the final pieces of a puzzle no one wanted to solve. The news breaks that evening. The nation mourns. Mackenzie's parents hold each other in a hotel room, sobbing until there are no tears left. Justice is coming, but it brings no comfort. The recovery operation in Logan Canyon continues for 2 days. Forensic anthropologists work with painstaking precision, documenting every fragment, every piece of evidence. The morning mist clings to the canyon walls, and the air is heavy with silence. Each item is photographed in situ before being carefully removed. Investigators work in near silence, communicating in gestures and low murmurs. The weight of what they are doing presses down on everyone present. The detective stands at the perimeter, watching. He has been present at many recovery sites, but this one feels different, perhaps because he has come to know Mackenzie through her digital footprint, through the memories shared by her friends and family. She is not just a case number. She is a person whose absence has left a wound in the world. By the end of the second day, all recoverable remains have been secured. The site is documented, measured, sealed. A tarp covers the excavation. Tomorrow, the area will be restored as much as possible. Nature will reclaim what humans have disturbed. The convoy of law enforcement vehicles returns to Salt Lake City under heavy police escort. The evidence is logged, secured, and sent to the lab for final analysis. The media has gathered outside the courthouse. Reporters shout questions at the detective as he walks past. He says nothing, his expression unreadable. That night, the prosecutor's office works late into the evening. The defense will look for any weakness, any procedural error. There can be no mistakes. The prosecutor reviews the timeline again. From the gasoline purchase, to the meeting at Hatch Park, to the fire in the backyard, to the burial in Logan Canyon. Every step documented, every action deliberate. This is not a crime of passion. This is murder, planned and executed with cold precision. At the district attorney's office, formal charges are filed. The document is thick, dense with legal language and evidentiary citations. Each count is outlined in detail. First-degree aggravated murder, aggravated kidnapping, obstruction of justice, abuse of a human body, desecration of a corpse. The evidence is itemized. Digital messages confirming the meeting, phone records placing Ajayi at Hatch Park, surveillance footage showing his vehicle, the burned remains in his backyard, the burial site in Logan Canyon, DNA confirmation, autopsy findings, witness statements. The prosecutor holds a press conference to announce the charges. The room is packed, cameras flash, reporters lean forward, recording every word. The evidence in this case reveals a pattern of premeditated violence, the prosecutor says. Ayoola Ajayi planned and executed the murder of Mackenzie Lueck. He attempted to destroy evidence and conceal his crime. The charges reflect the severity of his actions. A reporter asks about motive. The prosecutor pauses, choosing her words carefully. The evidence suggests this was murder for the sake of murder, an act of control and violence with no justification. The phrase hangs in the air. Murder for murder's sake. The public recoils at the bluntness of it, at the acknowledgement that sometimes evil needs no reason beyond its own existence. At the University of Utah, students organize a memorial walk. Hundreds participate, moving in silence from the student union to the campus chapel. They carry photos of Mackenzie, candles, flowers. The procession is somber, beautiful, heartbreaking. Mackenzie's sorority sisters speak at the chapel, sharing memories. They talk about her love of nursing, her dream of helping others, her kindness even on her hardest days. They talk about the friend they lost, the laughter that will never return. But beneath the grief is a growing determination that Mackenzie's death will not be forgotten, that her story will serve as a catalyst for change. Outside the courthouse, the public divides. Protesters gather on both sides of the street, their signs reflecting competing philosophies of justice. On one side, families demand the death penalty. Their signs are stark, unforgiving. Justice for Mackenzie, death to killers, protect our daughters. They believe that some crimes are beyond redemption, that certain acts demand the ultimate consequence. On the other side, advocates urge restraint. Their signs speak of mercy, of the flaws in capital punishment, of the humanity even the guilty retain. They argue that killing Ajayi will not bring Mackenzie back, that vengeance is not justice. Between them, the media circulates, capturing both perspectives. The discourse is loud, emotional, deeply personal. Mackenzie's case has become a flashpoint for larger debates about crime, punishment, and what society owes to victims and perpetrators alike. Inside the courthouse, legal motions are filed and argued. The defense seeks to exclude evidence, challenging the admissibility of prior allegations against Ajayi. In 2018, a woman had reported him for violent abuse. The case was never prosecuted, but the defense knows it will prejudice the jury. The judge listens to both sides. The prosecutor argues relevance. The prior incident establishes a pattern of violent behavior. The defense attorney counters that it's character assassination, not evidence. The judge reserves her ruling. The trial date is set for late summer. The media coverage reaches a fever pitch. National news networks send correspondents to Salt Lake City. True crime podcasts dissect every detail. Social media debates rage about digital safety, about the risks of online relationships, about victim blaming and responsibility. Mackenzie's face is everywhere. Her story is told and retold, analyzed and reinterpreted. She has become a symbol of innocence lost, of trust betrayed, of the darkness that can lurk behind a friendly message. The detective watches the circus from his office window. He wonders if Mackenzie would have wanted this to be remembered as a cautionary tale. He hopes she is also remembered for who she was: kind, ambitious, human. In October, the courtroom is silent as Ajayi enters his plea. He stands before the judge, flanked by his attorneys. His expression is neutral, almost serene. The judge asks how he pleads to the charge of first-degree aggravated murder. His voice is steady when he answers, "Guilty." The word echoes through the room. Mackenzie's family, seated in the front row, react with visible emotion. Her mother buries her face in her husband's shoulder. Her father stares straight ahead, jaw tight. The plea agreement is read into the record. In exchange for the guilty plea and his cooperation in locating Mackenzie's remains, the prosecution has agreed not to seek the death penalty. Instead, Ajayi will be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He also pleads guilty to desecration of a human body. The other charges will be absorbed into the sentencing. The judge accepts the plea. She sets a sentencing hearing for 2 weeks later, allowing time for victim impact statements to be prepared. Outside the courthouse, the district attorney addresses the media. Her expression is somber. This plea ensures that Ayoola Ajayi will never walk free again. It also spares the Lueck family the trauma of a prolonged trial. While we believe the evidence was overwhelming, the family's wishes were paramount in our decision. Reactions are mixed. Some see the plea deal as a betrayal, a surrender of justice. Others view it as pragmatic, a guarantee of conviction, without the years of appeals that accompany death penalty cases. Mackenzie's family releases a statement through their attorney. They express relief that the legal process is nearing its end. They thank the investigators, the prosecutors, and the community for their support. They ask for privacy as they prepare for the sentencing hearing. That night, candles are lit across Salt Lake City, in yards, on doorsteps, in windows, small flames against the darkness, each one a quiet testament to a life stolen too soon. The sentencing hearing takes place on October 23rd. The courtroom is packed, every seat filled. Media representatives sit shoulder to shoulder in the press gallery. Mackenzie's family occupies the front row, their faces etched with exhaustion and grief. Ajayi is led in wearing a dark suit, his hands cuffed. He sits between his attorneys, his expression blank. The prosecutor rises to deliver the state's recommendation. His voice is measured, but beneath the professional tone is barely contained fury. This was not a crime of passion. This was not an accident. Ayoola Ajayi planned and executed the murder of Mackenzie Lueck with calculated precision. He purchased supplies. He arranged a meeting. He killed her, burned her body, and attempted to hide the evidence. When that failed, he buried her remains in a remote canyon. He pauses, letting the words settle. During interviews, Ajayi stated that he wanted to know what it felt like to kill someone. That statement reveals the depths of his depravity. Mackenzie Lueck was a human being with dreams, with family, with a future. He extinguished her life to satisfy his own morbid curiosity. The courtroom is silent. Mackenzie's mother weeps quietly. Her father holds her hand, his knuckles white. The prosecutor continues, detailing the evidence, the suffering, the cold-blooded nature of the crime. He asks the judge to impose the maximum sentence life, without parole, consecutive sentences for each count. When he finishes, the defense attorney rises. He is brief, acknowledging the severity of the crime, arguing only that his client has accepted responsibility by pleading guilty and assisting in the recovery of Mackenzie's remains. He understands the magnitude of what he has done. He will spend the rest of his life in prison. That is justice. The judge listens without expression. When both sides have finished, she turns to the victim impact statements. Mackenzie's father is the first to speak. He approaches the lectern slowly, unfolding a sheet of paper with trembling hands. For a moment, he cannot speak, his grief too large for words. When he finally begins, his voice is soft but steady. Mackenzie was our daughter. She was kind. She was smart. She wanted to be a nurse, to help people who were suffering. She spent her life trying to make the world a little better, a little softer. He pauses, wiping his eyes. We will never see her graduate. We will never walk her down the aisle. We will never hold her children. All of that was stolen from us. Stolen by a man who saw her as nothing more than an object, a curiosity, to be destroyed. His voice breaks. He grips the lectern to steady himself. We don't want revenge. We want the world to remember her as she was a bright light, who loved fiercely and dreamed big. We want other families to be spared this pain, and we want him to know that he did not erase her. She lives on in our hearts, in the memories of everyone who loved her. He folds the paper and returns to his seat. His wife reaches for his hand. Mackenzie's mother stands next. She does not bring notes. She looks directly at Ajayi, her eyes red but unflinching. You took my baby girl. You took her smile, her laughter, her future. You took everything. Her voice is raw, stripped of pretense. I hope you think about her every day. I hope you see her face when you close your eyes. I hope you carry the weight of what you did for the rest of your life, because we will carry it too. We will carry it until we die. She does not wait for a response. She turns and sits down, her husband's arm around her shoulders. The judge allows a moment of silence before she speaks. Her voice is firm, commanding. Ayoola Ajayi, you have pleaded guilty to the murder of Mackenzie Lueck and to the desecration of her remains. The evidence presented to this court reveals a crime of unspeakable cruelty. You planned her death. You executed it. You attempted to destroy all evidence of her existence. You treated a human life as disposable. She pauses, her gaze fixed on him. The law allows me to impose life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. That is the sentence I now impose. You will spend the remainder of your natural life in prison. You will never walk free. You will never harm another person. The gavel falls. The sound is final, irrevocable. Ajayi is led out of the courtroom. He does not look back. Mackenzie's family watches him disappear through the door, and for the first time in months, they exhale. Justice has been served. It does not erase the loss. It does not bring her back. But it is something solid, something real, in a world that has felt unmoored since the night she vanished. That evening, the University of Utah campus glows with candlelight. Hundreds of students gather on the main lawn, forming a circle around Mackenzie's photograph. The image shows her smiling, full of life, her eyes bright with possibility. A sorority sister steps forward to speak. Her voice carries across the quiet crowd. Mackenzie believed in kindness. She believed in helping others. She wanted to be a nurse because she couldn't stand to see people suffer. She pauses, steadying herself. We can't bring her back, but we can honor her by living the way she did, with compassion, with courage, with love. We can make sure her name means something beyond tragedy. We can turn our grief into action. The students announced the formation of a foundation in Mackenzie's name, dedicated to digital safety education and support for families of victims. They vow to push for stronger protections, better awareness, clearer warnings about the risks hidden in online connections. Across the crowd, phones glow as students light virtual candles, sharing the moment across social media. The hashtag number Remember Mackenzie trends nationwide. Strangers thousands of miles away pause to light their own candles, to say her name, to acknowledge that her life mattered. The vigil continues late into the night. Songs are sung, memories are shared, tears are shed. But beneath the sorrow is something else, a quiet determination, a refusal to let her death be meaningless. The community has been shattered by her loss, but in the breaking, something new is forming. A collective resolve to protect the vulnerable, to question the narratives that normalize risk, to demand better from the platforms that connect strangers. In the dark, Mackenzie's face on the screen flickers in the candlelight. The wind carries her name across the campus, through the trees, into the night sky. In the weeks following sentencing, the legal system processes the final paperwork. At the court clerk's office, official documents record the consecutive sentences: life without parole for aggravated murder, additional years for desecration, further time for obstruction and abuse. The total is meaningless. Ajayi will die in prison. But the documentation matters. It creates a record, a historical marker that says this crime was witnessed, adjudicated, and punished. Buried within the case file are statements from prior victims, women who came forward after his arrest. They describe similar patterns: control, manipulation, sudden violence. Their statements were read into the record during plea negotiations, part of the mosaic that revealed who Ajayi truly was. One statement stands out. A woman describes meeting him online, agreeing to a date, and being attacked in his home. She escaped. She reported it, but the case stalled due to lack of physical evidence and her reluctance to testify publicly. She writes, "I knew he was dangerous. I tried to warn people, but no one listened until it was too late." The detective reads her words and feels the familiar ache of hindsight. Every system has cracks. Every safety net has holes. Mackenzie fell through. Public pressure mounts for policy reviews. Legislators announce hearings on digital platform accountability. Advocacy groups call for mandatory identity verification, background checks, better reporting mechanisms. The conversation is messy, tangled in debates about privacy versus safety, freedom versus regulation. There are no easy answers, but the questions are being asked, and that itself is progress. Mackenzie's family watches from a distance, too exhausted to engage directly. They have given interviews, shared their story, pleaded for change. Now they need time to grieve privately, away from cameras and microphones. The legal chapter is closed. The personal one will never end. On a cold November morning, national news programs dedicate segments to Mackenzie's case. Anchors sit at polished desks, speaking in somber tones about what her death revealed. Journalists interview experts, criminologists, psychologists, digital safety advocates. They dissect the warning signs that were missed, the red flags that went unnoticed. They discuss the psychology of predators who use technology to hunt, the ways platforms can be weaponized, the vulnerability of young people seeking connection in digital spaces. One expert notes a troubling trend: violent crimes, linked to transactional relationship platforms, have increased over the past 5 years. The anonymity, the lack of oversight, the normalized exchange of intimacy for money, all create conditions where predators thrive. Another expert pushes back, arguing that millions use such platforms safely, that the problem is not the technology, but the individuals who abuse it. The debate is circular, unresolved. A segment focuses on victim blaming. The anchor reads comments from social media, harsh judgments about Mackenzie's choices. Then, she brings on an advocate who speaks bluntly. Mackenzie Lueck did nothing wrong. She trusted someone. That trust was betrayed in the most horrific way possible. The only person responsible for her death is the man who killed her. Full stop. The words are simple, but they cut through the noise. Accountability belongs to the perpetrator, not the victim. Clips from the segment are shared widely. The conversation shifts, slowly, toward empathy and away from judgment. But beneath the public discourse, a darker current runs. True crime enthusiasts dissect every detail, creating timelines and theories. Some are respectful, seeking understanding. Others are voyeuristic, treating tragedy as entertainment coverage. They cannot. The public dissection of their daughter's death is too painful to witness. Instead, they gather in private, holding each other, remembering her in ways the world will never see. At the maximum security prison, where Ajayi is housed, life settles into a routine devoid of meaning. His cell is small, concrete, lit by fluorescent tubes that never fully darken. He spends 23 hours a day inside, allowed 1 hour in a small exercise yard. Other inmates know who he is. Word travels fast in prison. Men who have committed their own terrible acts still draw lines, still judge hierarchies of evil. Those who harm women and children occupy the lowest rung. Ajayi keeps to himself. He does not seek interaction. He reads, occasionally, books provided by the prison library. He writes nothing. He makes no phone calls. The guards watch him with a mixture of contempt and professional detachment. He is compliant, quiet, unremarkable in his daily existence. He follows rules, because resistance would bring consequences he wishes to avoid. At night, alone in his cell, his thoughts are unknowable. Does he feel remorse? Does he replay that night in June, the decisions that led to this concrete cage? Or does he feel nothing, his conscience as barren as the walls around him? The prison psychologist attempts evaluation. Ajayi declines to participate beyond the mandatory intake assessment. He answers questions in monosyllables, reveals nothing. He's shut down, the psychologist notes in his file. No visible affect, no engagement. He's withdrawn into himself completely. There will be no appeals. Ajayi signed away that right as part of the plea agreement. His conviction is final. His sentence is final. His life, what remains of it, will be spent in this place. Outside, the world moves on. News cycles shift to new tragedies, new outrages. Mackenzie's name fades from headlines, but inside these walls, time has stopped. For Ajayi, there is only the endless present, stretching toward a future that holds nothing but more of the same. Justice, in its coldest form. On a quiet Sunday afternoon in late autumn, Mackenzie's parents drive to the cemetery where she is buried. The air is crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and distant rain. The cemetery is nearly empty, just a few visitors scattered among the rows of headstones. Her grave is marked with a simple stone, her name, her dates, an inscription, beloved daughter, cherished friend, forever in our hearts. Her mother kneels, brushing leaves from the stone. She places fresh flowers in the vase, sunflowers, Mackenzie's favorite. Her father stands behind her, one hand resting gently on her shoulder. They do not speak. There is nothing left to say that hasn't been said 1,000 times in the privacy of their home, in the dark hours when sleep refuses to come. In the distance, a group of young women approaches, Mackenzie's sorority sisters, visiting together as they do every few weeks. They carry candles, even though it's daylight, and a banner with her photograph. They gather around the grave, forming a circle. One of them begins to sing softly, a song they used to sing together at chapter meetings, a song about sisterhood and strength. The others join in, their voices blending in harmony that carries across the cemetery. Mackenzie's mother listens, tears streaming down her face, but she is smiling too, because in this moment, her daughter is remembered not as a victim, but as a person who was loved. When the song ends, the sisters place their candles around the headstone. They hug Mackenzie's parents, wordlessly, before walking back toward their cars. Her father reaches into his pocket and pulls out the silver locket that Mackenzie wore when she left California. It was recovered from the evidence, cleaned, and returned to the family after the trial concluded. He places it gently on the headstone, letting it catch the fading sunlight. She would have wanted you to keep it, his wife says quietly. I know, he replies, but I want her to have it back. They stand together in silence as the sun dips lower, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber. Around them, the cemetery is peaceful, the only sound the wind moving through the trees. In the city below, a new foundation launches in Mackenzie's name. University students attend their first digital safety workshop. Legislators draft bills requiring better oversight of online platforms. Parents have difficult conversations with their children about trust and danger. The world is changing, slowly, because a 23-year-old woman with dreams of healing others had her life stolen in the dark. Her death became a catalyst, her memory a call to action. But here, in this quiet place, she is simply Mackenzie, a daughter who loved sunflowers and wanted to help people, a young woman who deserved to grow old, to achieve her dreams, to live. Her parents stay until the sun sets completely. When they finally walk back to their car, they do not look back. They have learned that moving forward does not mean forgetting. It means carrying her with them, always. The wind picks up, rustling the flowers on her grave. The candles flicker, but do not go out. In the gathering darkness, her name remains visible on the stone, a reminder that she was here, that she mattered, that she will not be forgotten. The sky deepens to purple, then black. Stars emerge, distant and cold. The cemetery gates close. The world sleeps, but somewhere, a candle still burns. Somewhere, her name is spoken. Somewhere, justice and memory intertwine, refusing to let the darkness have the final word. Mackenzie Lueck lived. She was loved. She is remembered. And that, in the end, is what remains when everything else has been taken away.